Hi, everyone. This is the Intentional Life Summit, and I am excited to have Adam Brooks back with us for a summit because being intentional with our virtual space is really, really important. So, welcome, Adam. I am so excited to talk about how to communicate in our families about all things virtual, which we love for ourselves and our kids.
Yeah, definitely. I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, before we dive in, I'd love for you to share your quick story of how you came to where you are now so people can get to know you a little better.
Totally. So I got here through a bunch of roundabout, random, weird ways, as we all do. Life happens and you just kind of meander from one thing to another. Wanted to I wanted to be an actor. I wanted to do some things. I went to New York. I performed off Broadway and then I realized I don't know that I want to be an actor anymore. And I came home and was getting my master's in leadership development and substitute taught at a high school because I heard you could do that with an undergrad degree in Arizona. And I long-term subbed in a class for kids with learning disabilities and emotional disabilities. And it kind of changed my life. And I went back and got another master's in special education and became a high school teacher. And I taught high school for about 13 years. And I helped open a school in downtown Phoenix and worked with kids with different disabilities. And then I started teaching college part-time and working with teachers who work with kids with disabilities. And then I started doing a lot of speaking at schools and I started really talking to kids at assemblies about what it feels like to feel all alone and what it feels like to hate the skin that you're put in, because that's something I felt when I was their age and it's nothing that anybody ever talked to me about. And that was a passion of mine. And so I started doing assemblies in schools, and then schools said, "What else you got?" And I started doing professional development for teachers at schools, and then other people said, "What else you got?" And so I started doing more and more, and I wrote a couple mini books about millennials, and then one about social media. And then Arizona was number 2 in the nation for teen suicides, and I was really struggling with what I wanted to do and get families to talk again. With technology, we find that we're connected but alone, as Sherry
Mhm.
Turkle says in her TED Talk. And so I really wanted to get us connected again. So I made a game for families to play, or a conversation starter thing for families to play on the way to school, that asks different questions so that families can actually connect. Yeah, drive along. There you go. You got it. So that they can connect in the car and have conversations again. So that's really short way of the last 20 something years of where I got to where I'm at. But yeah.
I love your journey because, like you said, you didn't really know that you were going to get here, right? And I feel like that's so much of life of we
Mhm.
think we're going one place and then it's okay to journey and figure out like where we're supposed to be, right? And who we're supposed to be talking to. So I love that.
I've always felt like when you see a need and you know you can kind of help that need, then just your only response is to show up, right? And then I just kind of feel like I've done that, and then randomly I look back and go, oh, uh, here we are.
Yeah. And all the things that we have gone through personally, right? And then the people that we can help. And that's kind of how I got here too. So I
Yeah,
love that.
yeah, definitely.
And I think many of us realize, like you were saying, right, that we grew up a lot different than the people that the next generation, the kids that we are interacting with. And a lot of us have a hard time grappling with, okay, what do we want to do for our kids, right? And screens are everywhere, social media is everywhere. And obviously, every family is different in how they manage devices, how they manage screens and online time and things like that. But there are important things to be aligned as a family because kids are going to come to us and say, oh, but so and so's family gets this, or so and so's family has a phone, all these things. So maybe we can start with just how should we be talking about this in our homes? How have you seen families start this conversation successfully?
Yeah, that's a great question. Technology is so tricky because it's not going to go anywhere and it's here to stay. And yet we didn't have it. Well, I will speak for myself because I'm sure that you are much younger than I am. But I didn't have grow up with tech. I got to play on the computer for 20 minutes at school on a Friday if we had been good all week. And when I say play, I mean do math questions so that a fish could eat another fish or whatever, right? Or Oregon Trail or something of that sort. Trying to figure out where in the world Carmen Sandiego is. So those were kind of like my limited points of technology. And I didn't grow up in a very wealthy home, so we didn't get technology or a computer until we were much older. I think I was late in high school when I finally got a computer, and it was the family computer, and it was the dial up and all the fun things that
Oh yeah.
20 minutes to download in my Netscape Gmail, email.
Yeah.
And
That was
so,
at the AOL phase, you know?
oh, totally,
Yeah, where
totally.
you have to plug it in and make sure no one's on the phone because you have
Oh,
to switch
what are
it
you
back.
doing? What are you doing? Yeah, exactly. I'm like, I'm online. Leave me
Yeah.
alone. Uh, totally. And so for me, it's so funny because nobody had those conversations with me. And so trying to figure out how to have those with somebody else or our kiddos is just challenging. It's hard. And so I think part of that is honoring the hardness of it and saying, hey, this is difficult. I think we as parents figure that we have to know everything first, and then we can start having these conversations. But the answer is no, we're learning with our kids.
Yeah.
So we're allowed to kind of start those conversations with, hey, I'm not super stoked at all. Maybe we shouldn't say stoked. I don't know what the new terms are for these kids, right? Let's maybe some less Riz. Just kidding. But maybe it's, hey, I'm not excited about all the time that we're all spending in the same room on our screen.
Yeah.
So, what can we do as a family to do less of that and really start having these brainstorming sessions? I mean, for me, I'm so crazy that I want to get out post-it notes and get all the family together and go, let's brainstorm activities that we can do instead of sitting on our screens, right? And handwrite them all and have them posted around the house so that we have reminders. And
Mhm.
that's really, we talk about tech contracts a lot and how to have like a contract with your family and say, all right, this is the time that we've agreed on. But it doesn't have to be as formal and as stuffy as a contract. It
Mhm.
can be an agreement, or it can just be we write on these, butcher paper, and then we all sign it, and then we all talk about it, and then it's just posted, and it's a good reminder. Um,
Mhm.
for me, it can be a casual thing, but it should be an all-inclusive family discussion. And
Yes.
also, your kids are going to want to push for things that aren't great, right? They
Yeah.
want ice cream for dinner. I get it. And yet the answer is also no.
Yeah.
And so if we can say no to Butterfingers for dinner, I'm sure we can start saying no to unlimited full access to screen time and the internet when we're not supervised. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying?
Yeah. And I love having these conversations, and we've started having them as well, because screens start really early, right? But
Mhm.
I think it's so important to tie it to our family values of like, why are these devices used and what do we want to use them for, right? Because, like you said, tech is everywhere and tech is not bad in itself. It's just how we use it, how we get sucked into it, the addictive nature of it, right? And the isolation, whatever it may be. And so for each family, like I said, it is different. So if we can talk about it as a family and say, okay, like in our house, we like to say, okay, once these things are done, you can then do this amount of time. Like it is a predetermined thing. So my children know, okay, don't come talk to me unless you've done the other things that you're supposed to, right?
Right.
And then please set your own timer. If you don't set your time and manage your time well, then you don't get it next time.
Yeah.
And
Well, you hit the nail on the head. I do a lot of corporate branding, and
mm,
so in my consulting world, and so I find that I love the idea of families coming up with their own brand,
mm,
right? Like, what are the values? What are the things that we agree on as a family? We want to be known for. We want that people to think of it when they think of us, they think of this,
mm,
right? And whatever that is, tech should fall under those things. So if it's like kindness, generosity, whatever it is, then is being online generous? Like, is that showing generosity? Are we kind? Like, like what is? Are we watching kind things? Are we looking at kind things? Like, how is that being kind of uh, um, fulfilled by those values? So I love that guiding light of values. So I love that.
yeah. And this is an example from this morning, actually, but I'm okay with adding some time. So my kids really like Mario Kart,
Yeah.
and they wanted to play as a family, right? So I'm kind of like, oh, more video games. But when they wanted to play as a family, it is kind of a bonding thing where we're able to play together. So I'm willing to, nudge a little bit on the time and expand a little bit. And so,
Well, there's something different between passive and active screen time, and I don't know that we talk a ton about that either. And so when it's active screen time, it's better, right? Like it's a different, you're engaging with the technology like you and I are doing right now. And so that is just an additive. But when we are passively letting screen time happen in front of us by scrolling and drooling and whatever, that's where we start seeing the brain being burned out on screens and having those other issues of over dopamining our system because of that. So active screen time isn't, I'd much rather have active screen time than passive screen time. And really kind of evaluating what that looks like as a family. So yeah, I love
yeah,
that.
thanks for adding that in because it's absolutely true. And then, when it's the passive, you also start looking at everybody else's and the comparing and all the things that you can go wrong from that too, right?
Yeah, mental health and technology is very closely linked. So
Yeah. So you mentioned tech contracts, and while we might not want it formal, we might not want it, like, okay, everybody must sign and all this kind of stuff. Like, it doesn't have to be formal, like you said, but there are some things that are really important about it, right? Like, I really like the aspect of we say what it is that we expect when people use it or when we give devices or when we give screen time. And then the rules are there so that if they're broken, they also know what the consequence is, right? So if we need to roll something back, take something away, it's not this unexpected thing. And so, can you share some things that you've seen that work well, elements that should be addressed in contracts or whatever you
yeah,
want to call it, agreements?
yeah. And again, like you said, it can be informal or formal. It's funny because our generation, well, again, I'll speak for myself. I grew up in a family where consequences were felt random, right? Like you did this, I didn't like that you did that, so now there's this punishment. But the next day I do the same thing and it's a different punishment, right? And a lot of it was because my parents were figuring it out themselves, right? So I don't blame them at all, but it wasn't clearly understood what was happening all the time. And so what I love about contracts is that if one of the things I think is at least posting or putting up somewhere where they can physically be seen what's the expectations and what's the consequences. Then there's no gotcha, there's no surprise, there's no I'm annoyed and so now here's a punishment, right? And that's what our kids want. They want clear expectations, they want consistency, they want structure. And so that really provides that around technology, which tech is kind of structureless when we just open up the internet and go, right? So it's really helpful to have those things, I think, to be a part of it. And so the posting of it is important, I think. The consequences are going to be huge. Because if you can agree to all of them when you are of sober mind, right? You're not emotional, you're not upset, you're not in the moment. Now you can go, okay, you know what? I may have jumped to consequence four. So now I will own that, right? And then we can decide how to just go to the consequences like we have planned.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I mean,
because
even today with kids in school, I knew I was getting in trouble because my name was put on the board. And then there was a check mark. And then there was another check mark. And then it was to the office. And that was like the routine. And at least I knew where I stood. And we've kind of done away with that in schools, and that's up for debate. But at the same time, I think kids go, I don't really know what's expected of me in other places. And so this is one area where we can really be clear, which, Brené Brown says, clear is kind,
Mhm,
unclear is unkind. So
mhm,
we can be
mhm.
clear with our kids. That's kindness, and that helps them know the boundaries of where I can play and where I can't.
Yeah, because how many conversations have I had with fellow moms where they go, oh, I got so upset that they did this thing and I took away their TV because it hurts the most, right? But then it becomes this huge conflict of, well, you can't take it away and, that's not fair. Or the
Mhm.
parents are also like, what did I do to myself? Because that's how I get my work done, you know? So nobody wants it, but yet we do these things out of just non-sober mind, right? Where we just react.
Well, and with technology, what we find is we want to either give the kid everything, they have the phone and it has access to everything under the sun, or then we get mad, they get a C, right? And so then we take away the phone and we say, "Oh, you don't deserve the phone anymore." But what that's saying, because why do we get a kid a phone or a device? Because we want to what?
Safety or
Keep
yeah.
keep them safe. Yes, number one, keep them safe. Well, but if you get a C, I take it away.
Yeah.
You don't, right? So
Yeah.
kids who get C's don't get to be safe.
Yeah.
Is that what we're telling them? And so it becomes really confusing for the kid about when am I allowed to have it? When am I not? How do I have to be good or perfect or I have to get good grades to have access to this technology? Instead, what I find is if we have a quote unquote dumb phone that we can roll up, right? So, hey, you use this flip phone, and if you use it well for this amount of time, then you get access to this app, right? And then if you use that for 6 months, well, now maybe you get access to these friends or this conversation or this next step, right? And we roll up, and then when it happens that they mess up, because they will, we roll back. Okay, now the app is gone, so that's okay. We tried it, didn't work out. So for 6 months, you don't have the app, but you can earn it back, right? And so we roll up and roll down, but we never take the device fully away and give it back and take it away and give it back. Because then that just chips away at this trust between you and the kiddo. And again, you end up hurting yourself. You're like, well, now they've got volleyball practice and I don't want to get a hold of my kid because I don't remember having to call the school, right? And I don't, we just always knew what time things were at and they don't even know their own address anymore. So we need to give them a phone, but we can give them a different version of a phone depending on where our kid falls at.
And one of our values is connection, right? And making sure that the time that we're spending is like time together and all these different things and that it's intentional, which is also part of our summit, right? Be living an intentional life because with these things, we want to give our children healthy methods to deal with things, right? And to be able to talk about things because there are going to be tons of things about life. Like technology is one of those big things that we want them to be able to talk to us about. There's also all these other things in life. And so if we can have these open conversations and if they think they're like responsible enough to something for something more, I'd love for them to come talk to me and pitch me why, right? Like have this conversation. And it's not this, well, you never give me Instagram or whatever it might be that they're fighting for. Um, I don't want to say fight because I want it to be a conversation. I want it to be something that we can talk about and have them realize that yes, we're open to talking about it, and
Well, and that's where it's good to be like, oh, you want Instagram? Cool. Let's all go online. I'm going to put it on the TV in the living room, and let's start Googling things like, at what age should a kid get Instagram? What
mhm,
is healthy about Instagram? What is unhealthy about Instagram? And now we've got a perfect conversation piece for
yeah.
us to discuss as a family with what we're seeing over research. Because now we're teaching our kids that there's answers that we can go find and look for, and that's okay. We want to look for answers. We want to do research. We want to make sure we're making the best decision, not just a reaction to what my friends have.
Yeah. How do you feel about adding monitoring into the contractor agreement portion of things? And I know a lot of my friends have said, well, we always have the option to monitor and, whether it's a monitoring service kind of thing or just we're going to periodically check your texts or, whatever it is.
I I love monitoring. I also always use a little caveat for families, which is um, don't spy.
Mhm.
If you are looking for negative things your kid was doing, you're going to find them, and you will then be dysregulated yourself, right? If
Mhm.
my mother heard every conversation I had as a junior high kid, I would be buried in the White Tank Mountains in Arizona. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
it's not, I learned so many things, that weren't great, but that's part of growing up is you learn where you fit and what words mean and what matters and who to say what to and who not to. And all of that's really normal growing up. And so we can rob that of our kids if we are hyper regulating everything we're seeing online.
Mhm.
However, because there is so much predation and predatory behavior, because there is so many issues with kids sharing things they shouldn't be sharing, I would always recommend monitoring or spot checking. So
Mhm.
if you use a program, that's one reason why I do like certain programs that do monitoring, because some of them you don't get to see everything. You just get to see bits and pieces
Mhm.
whenever things don't work right or something's happening.
Yeah.
And then they can give you questions of like, you should probably talk to your kid about this.
Mhm.
I'd prefer that. Or my niece has a 13, my sister got her a phone. So every time I see her, I just go, hand it over. And she gives it to me. And I just go through and I just look at the settings. I look at who she's talking to. I check certain things. And my sister allows her to have some apps that I wouldn't if she was mine. However, that's okay. That's their thing. But I still check them and look at it and see who she's talking to. Because if anything else, I just want to get a good picture of a big giant overview of her digital life,
Yeah.
right? Is it we're very lucky and she's still very innocent and posting really innocent things and talking to her friends about when they swear too much and she's uncomfortable with that. And I love that for her because I was probably the kid they needed to talk to about that when I was her age. So it's just so funny because it just gives me a big overview. And now I know what to talk about and how to push the conversations when I do need to talk to her about stuff.
Yeah. That's such a huge thing, right? To be able to kind of check things that they know, but then to have that conversation of now in this digital age, like when we said things as a kid, no one documented it, no one, spread it like wildfire, but everything can be used against you, and we just need to be aware of that. And so I know that's something that I've stressed with my kids and like
And
just
it's
be
not
aware.
so rarely is it our own kids. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
It's the link they get sent from someone, or it's the meme that someone thinks is funny and puts in the group chat, which gives us a chance to talk about prejudice or talk about bias or talk about, sexual things, because who knows what those memes are or what's going on. And now we get a really good foothold to have a conversation about why this is important for our family to really understand
Yeah.
where we stand as a family and what that means and why we aren't going to do that or act like this or whatever. Yeah, I think that's important.
Yeah, I agree. So I also want to touch on modeling because I think that is a huge part of parenting and being a caring adult in kids' lives, right? Is they are watching everything. And so I will be honest, I have a lot of screen time because I work full time, right? And so then if I'm doing all my other stuff, it tends to be on screens. And so I've had these conversations with my kids where they go, you're always on your phone or you're always on your computer. And I do involve them in a lot of things. So I show them like, okay, I'm working on this YouTube video. Do you want to help me make it? Or, do you want to help me make this like little short or whatever it is? So they know a lot of what I'm doing and what I'm using it for. But can we talk a little bit about kind of the parent leadership and parent modeling piece of it and why it's so important for us to be aware of that and how we can change it if we think, gosh, like they are seeing us on their phone on our phones too much or whatever it might be.
Well, first of all, I really this is such a difficult one because I look at my childhood and I'm like, yeah, let's get back to like no screens. And then I look at my childhood and I'm like, I had my Walkman on 24/7 in my house. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I had music blaring in my ears so that I could kind of also ignore my family. On car trips, we all had our own individual Walkmans in the car while we're driving, and so it's like it's just funny because I feel like there's a little bit of a piece of us who's always kind of looking for that privacy, that like my
Mhm.
own thing, and so I understand that and I want to honor that and I get that. And also, you're exactly right. The number one thing I hear from kids when I speak to kids And I say, what's something that you want your parents to know, or that you want me to tell your parents on your behalf? They all say, get off your phones. You're on your phones just as much, if not more, than I am.
Yeah.
And so what do you expect? And so that breaks my heart, right? That's
Yeah.
so hard. And so for me, it's not necessarily about time away from your phone as much as it is about replacement activities. And this is what I tell parents all the time. When you take your kid's phone away and then they're sitting in their room alone with nothing to do, you're only going to hurt yourself, because they're going to obsess over it. They're going to overthink it. They're going to bother you more. It's just going to be like a challenge of, how do I get this phone back? But when you take away a kid's phone and then you give them a coloring book, right? Or you give them this or that, or you enroll them in a theater class, or you put them into karate, or you whatever, right?
Yeah.
Then we've got a replacement for that technology and that time that was spent on the screens. And that's what we need as a family. Is if we're, it's not about you being on a screen less and then what, sitting in front of the TV with your kids, right? That's not the answer. The answer is saying, I'm going to put my screen down and we're going to go for a walk. We're
Yeah.
all going to leave our devices at home and we're going to go for a walk to prove that we don't even need to have them on our hips, right?
Mhm.
I can go knock on a door if I need help. Like, it's fine. We're going to figure this out.
Yeah.
What did we do 20 years ago, right? We're allowed to take walks, go for bike rides without technology. We're going to go to the art museum together as a family. We're going to go. So it's about replacing that screen time with something else,
Yeah.
not just about stopping screen time. Granted, stopping screen time is great. However, I find it's easier and it makes more sense to families when it's replaced with tabletop games, or it's replaced with going to the gym together, or something, cooking a meal as a whole family, right? You're in charge of this, you're in charge of this, you're in charge of this. Let's all do this as a family. Like, that's what I see is probably a little bit better and healthier. The problem is a lot of families are like, well, it's been so long since we've done that, I don't know what to do. And that's where finding activity guides, using Google, figuring out like what's happening in my area, getting
Mhm.
involved in your community, volunteering at kids' schools. That's really going to help open up some of those things of what we can do. So,
Yeah. And kids have really good ideas themselves too, right? So if we kind of involve them in the process of, okay, what would you want to do? Because I've asked the kids wanting to go hiking, right? And a lot of the time it's no, I don't want to be outside, or I don't want to do this or whatever. But if we can kind of brainstorm together, like what are some things we would want to do? And then of course we want to challenge them or push them into some other things to give it a try. But I
they've started. I'm becoming a little weirdly obsessed with this new trend of like fake disposable cameras. I don't know if
mm,
you see this, but
mm,
they have all these new cameras you can buy, and they look like a disposable camera. They are digital, but they are not digital where there's not like a screen or anything to look at. You just take it and then you go into the world and you take pictures, and then you can Bluetooth upload it to your computer to see what you captured.
oh, it's so fun.
Like, if people could take those out as a family and go, let's see who takes the coolest pictures, or let's do right. And so it doesn't have to be like, we're going to go churn butter. Like, let's go learn a whole new skill as a family. That's okay if it's not that. It can be something simple, like, let's go take all your GI Joes and let's go put them in the dirt and take photos as if they're in war,
Yeah.
right? Or doing whatever, or playing games, or let's take pictures of your My Little I don't even know what the cool toys are now. That's how old I am. Saying My Little Ponies and GI Joes.
I'm with you. I think we're
Right?
about the
Right?
same.
It's like, let's go build scenes around town and take pictures, and with these disposable cameras. And I go on vacation in Carlsbad, California a lot,
Mhm.
and they've got this rail trail right by my buddy's place that I stay at. And in this rail trail, as you're walking, you look over, and on these trees are little like gnome or fairy doors that somebody spent time painting on these trees. And there's like little signs. And so now you're spending the whole trip just looking for these and hidden
Mhm.
throughout this rail trail. And I'm like, oh, what a beautiful experience of something that is like, let's go paint on some trees. Let's go, right? Like, let's go have, find all the hidden things around town or the things that nobody talks about or whatever. So I don't know.
I'm gonna have to go check this out. I go to San Diego quite a bit too. So,
Gosh, it's so crazy to me. Like I walk down this trail and there's all these little painted things, and it's just so fun because you don't even notice it if you're not paying attention. And
yeah.
so then it just kind of shows you what things you can pay attention to.
Yes.
And that's such a good thing to teach our kids about presence,
Hmm.
about the moment.
Yeah.
Because most of our kids are living either in the past or they're living in the future, which is what social media is.
Yeah.
Social media is never present. It's always about something that just happened or something that's about to happen, but it's never about what's happening in this moment. Because the second you post, it's gone and you've just missed out on what was happening in the moment. So,
Oh, I love that. I love that you brought that up because it's absolutely right.
mhm.
I would like our family to live in the present, and I think we would all say that, right? To enjoy the moments. And we all also say that we only have 18 summers with our kids. I mean, it's not technically true, but
Well, I'm engaged with my parents this summer, so I get it.
make it count while they actually want to spend time with us. Um, and I guess I want to also address really quick about phones and devices, or maybe even just like every step of the way, right? Because I
Yeah,
don't want people to think that there is this one size or one age fits all thing,
yeah.
but it's really about responsibilities, about knowing your kid, and maybe when it gets to multiple kids, it gets harder because you're like, oh, well, this kid got it at this age, but it's really about that responsibility and what they're ready for. Can we just address that really quick for our moms?
So the number one question I get asked is, what age do I give my kid a device? Now, nationally, the average age is fourth grade, which for me is wild. But I also get it. Uh, I had dinner with some friends who have three kids, and at dinner, each kid got a device, and we were out in public, and it was the nicest dinner we've all had together in a long time. And so I get the like draw to like, hey, I just need a break.
Yeah.
And yet it's still not great, right? So we can hold both things to be true. So I
That's us
tell
on
people,
flights. We go flights, anything goes.
right, you're like, whatever it takes,
Yeah,
it's candy, chocolate, it doesn't
that's
matter. Like,
right.
you're good. You're good. Just please don't cry. Please don't embarrass
Yeah.
me. Um, I tell families all the time when they say what age, I say, can they unload the dishwasher without being asked? Can they do their own laundry? I mean, you and me and most people our age, I was doing my own laundry when I could reach the washer and dryer. Mainly because my parents were, I was a latchkey kid. They had jobs. They were gone. I was home alone a lot. And so with my siblings. So I had to kind of deal with it myself. I remember ironing in junior high. And so it's one of those things where can your kid do that? And if the answer is no, then maybe they're not ready for the World Wide Web. And so I think what you can do is you can actually create a checklist of things you want your kid to be able to be mature enough to do. And once those things are happening consistently, maybe it's okay to give them access to something like technology. Now, you may want to do it a little bit earlier, and I get the draw to that, but my caution would be if you do, make sure it's a dumb phone, right? They've got those where it calls four people, and one of them is your grandma, and she wants to hear from you. So there you go. They're preset, and that's all you get. That's okay because they don't have access to the internet, they have access to all sorts of stuff. But if you really want to give them a typical phone where they have access to more things like social media or texting anyone they want or Google, whatever, then you need to have a checklist of what they need to be able to do mature wise so that you can make sure that they're effective. There's a great book by Julia Lythcott Haynes called How to Raise an Adult. And it's really about what skills, what values, what abilities do you want your adult child to have? And then we backwards map what to do now to instill those values. And a lot of us will say we want our kids to be resilient, right? And have grit and have determination. And yet we remove every obstacle from their path so they have an easy life, right? Well,
Yeah.
that's not grit. That's not resilience. The reason why you and I have grit and resilience is because we didn't have anybody removing obstacles from our path. In fact, we may have had a couple people toss some in, right? And so we had to figure it out. And so we want our kids to be like us in that way. And yet we clear their path to make it easy. And we do their laundry for them. And we, cook for them. And we make sandwiches for them. And we pack their lunch, which again is all fine. However, at some point, it's on you. I mean, it's up to you. I remember I got a certain amount of money for lunch. And if I wanted something more, that's my money. I got to figure that out, right? It's like I want the Nutter Butters, so I got to come up with the money.
Yeah.
But my parents were going to pay for that, and so yet we go, oh, it's okay, it's okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah.
It's just a little bit, right? And then we keep doing that, and then we wonder why our kids are like, well, of course I'm going to always rely on you.
Mhm.
You've been doing my own laundry forever. I don't even know how to start a machine.
Yeah. And they also don't realize how much goes into it, right? Because they just get these lunches. They don't know, oh, you have to go buy it. You have to go do this. And you have to like think ahead, which are also skills that I want my children to have. Yeah.
Right. I want us all preparing our lunches together because guess what? I need to pack my own lunch too. So
Yeah.
let's all sit down and do our own lunches.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
no, take those Butterfingers don't go in your lunch pail.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a great like we want them to think about like healthier alternatives or like why do we eat certain things? What's important, right? And these are all
Imagine as a family watching a YouTube video of the best meal for kids to eat to maximize their education. Let's watch that video. I'm
yeah.
sure there's a million of them, right? And then
Yeah.
let's, all right, now let's all make a grocery list for what we're going to go to the grocery store for, right? And now let's go ahead and meal prep together. Now you had a day-long activity as a family when you weren't sure what to do and they kept saying they were bored.
Yeah. And even grocery shopping, like they get the value of money, right? You can compare the different things. You can say, oh, well, you always want this one, but are you sure? There's just so many things that we can talk about. Life skills for kids are just like a huge passion of mine.
And
So I
make a
could go
game
on and
out of
on.
it. Give your kids $40 and say, all right, you got to make all your meals for the whole week at the grocery store last. How are you going to do it? Let's go do some math at the grocery store.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. All right. I could talk forever, but I always like to end our discussions with a quick action or challenge for our moms so that they can take what they learned today, what they heard today, and start taking action because it can be overwhelming. Like, oh my gosh, there's so much that I'm not doing or so much that I need to do. What is your challenge for our moms today?
So my challenge would be that I want you to engage your kids in the conversation of how do we connect with each other more and with our screens less as a family?
Mhm.
Asking that question alone and letting your kid journal about it, think about it, process it, text you about it, whatever it is, right? So that we can then come back and have a discussion on what are some things we can implement to really help our family connect more and be on screens a little bit less.
I love that. And I know you have a generous freebie for everyone. Can you share what that is and how people can connect with you further?
Yeah, I am just kind of feeling in this season that we all need a little extra help. So my Drive-A-Log packs that you've got right there, I've got 3 versions. There's an elementary school, middle school, and high school. Yep, you've got the high school one right there. And if you go to drivealog.com and you use the code ChooseJoy, all one word, I'm going to give you a free pack. So you'll get a free pack. You just have to pay for shipping. I literally ship them myself. I have them in my closet right here. Like I do all the stuff. So yeah, go ahead and use that code and I'll give you a free pack of cards to have conversation starters with your kids. They're designed to be used in the car because research says they'll talk for longer and stronger if they aren't forced to make direct eye contact. So a car is a great place to have a conversation like, if you saw another kid getting bullied at school, what would you do? If somebody asked you to vape in the bathroom, what are we going to say? So that you have a chance to talk about your family values with your kid so that they can actually kind of know proactively some answers instead of reacting if and when they happen.
Fantastic. I love them. I have elementary school kids, but I have these because I was just looking ahead. I like to think ahead and, understand what are some of the things that we're going to be addressing in the future. Um, but anything else you want to leave with our moms before we finish our time together?
I'm always a resource. So if you need anything, please let me know. AdamLeeBrooks.com is my website. You can find me on all the socials, adam.lee.brooks on Instagram. I'm happy to be a resource and help. I think so many times we feel like we're alone in this journey, and we are not. We can lean on each other and go, hey, this happened. I'm just thinking of some ideas. What can we do? And so I love that stuff. I'm an idea man, so that's something that's really part of my heart. So reach out, feel free. But yeah. And
Thank you.
also, you're always doing better than you think you are, by the
That
way.
is so true. That's what we need to hear, right? We always
Yes.
see the people that are doing better and cut ourselves short.
We
So,
always see how far we have left to go, and we rarely look back and see how far we've come and are proud. And so it's okay to say, hey, I may not be there, but I am here and I'm getting there, and it's okay.
and if you are watching this video, right, that means that you want to improve as a parent, you want to be better. That's just already miles ahead of people. And if you want to keep these talks forever, there is a VIP upgrade option for you. This whole week is free, but if you want to keep them forever and the other bonuses that are included, that is always an option. Thank you, Adam, for sharing your care for this next generation and passion for living with intention.